Christina, what if the present moment isn't a moment at all?
Can I think
What if,
about that for a moment?
in other words, what if now is not in time? Anyway,
I'm willing to listen. I'll hear you out.
so welcome to the secret of the present moment. And you're with us here at Mastering Thought, where we invite you to soar with us. In this episode is part one of three. So today we're going to talk about the secret of the present moment.
Hmm.
And in part two, we're going to discover how to enter presence. And a kind of a pro tip, this does not involve meditation or mindfulness.
Hmm.
And then in part three, we're going to talk creating the present. And as you might guess, I have my own unusual interpretation.
Maybe unusual, but testable. Maybe proven true.
We'll see. We'll see. So, so the question that arose for me, and I'll tell you the story of how this happened. What if your brain knows what's coming before you do? So, back in 1997, there was a researcher, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Radin. Anyway, what they did was they used galvanic skin response, which is skin conductance, which can be measured with electrodes, and they hooked people up, and then they would show them a series of computer generated, where there were random pictures, and the random selection was generated by a computer. So the researchers didn't know, and the subjects didn't know what order the pictures came in. And
Hmm.
embedded in the pictures, and these were very quickly cycled,
Hmm.
and embedded in the
Like too
pictures,
fast to even register, or
I don't know, but they were
okay,
quick. I
okay,
think they did register, but it was like, a car and then a baseball field and then, rapid like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay, embedded in the pictures was one that was emotionally disturbing. Now, what they discovered was, like so many of these things just freaked them out, was the galvanic skin response measured a response from the amygdala, which is fight or flight, prior to the person seeing the emotional picture.
Hmm. It was like they were
Very
reacting to it before they saw it.
well. It wasn't like that. That's exactly what happened.
Hmm.
They
Hmm. So
reacted
there's
to
like
the
an
picture,
intuition about it.
something like that, exactly. And
Yeah.
I, and as you know, the last episode we did was on quantum physics, and we had our little experience with Grok's AI.
Hmm.
And so I've been thinking about this, and I was thinking of this in terms of quantum physics, and I was trying to think, well, maybe this is retrocausality, because in quantum mechanics, there's a concept about retrocausality and all this weird stuff
Hmm.
about time.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, it came to me what was happening.
Huh. Uh-huh.
Because what I was thinking is in quantum mechanics, there is a um, term called least action,
Hmm.
where the particle is in superposition, and then when it goes from point A to point B, it chooses the path of least action.
Right.
And I was
Like,
thinking, as I was speculating about this, I was thinking, okay, maybe the path of least action includes the past, or includes the past. And so I was contemplating this,
hmm.
and I was thinking about quantum, theory, and suddenly I realized what was happening. And I'm going to explain that today.
Hmm.
Now you and I have talked about another experiment that was done, I believe, back in the 80s, which is Benjamin Libet or Libet. I don't know how to pronounce his name. and he
You
described what
there?
was called readiness potential. And they had an experiment where they had people move their wrists. I believe that's what it was. And they had them connected to EEGs, and what they discovered was the brain would activate the motor cortex before the person was aware they decided to move their wrist.
I mean, that makes sense. Sometimes people go into flow state and they're not even applying like active thinking to their movement. They're just like moving with grace and it's like it's being handed to them. Am I on the right page with you?
I think you are. That's a different
Yeah.
way. But that's exactly. I think what's happening, and we discussed this before. The self that thought it was deciding was coming in a half a second after the brain produced what Libet called the readiness potential to move the rest. And so in both of these,
Mm-hmm.
and the Radin research has been duplicated with respiration and heart rate and a bunch of other things. And so these are real things where people react, their
Right.
brains react before the action takes place. Very weird.
Mm-hmm.
But then it came to me how this works, and that's what that I'm going to explain my version of how this works today.
Okay.
But that was the inspiration.
And this is the
So,
retrocausality part?
well, there is no retrocausality. It appears that there is,
Okay.
but, but
Mm-hmm.
that's but that's not what's actually happening, in my
All right.
opinion.
All
Now,
right. Teach us, Professor Mark. I want to know.
well, now, Christina, I'm just a country therapist, and well, I
All
don't
right,
know.
fair. But I like the way that you think through these things. So I'm interested in hearing your perspective and take on them.
All right, so what I would encourage all the listeners to do is to go back and read some things about quantum mechanics. Three things in particular. Number one, what are quantum fields, which are basically fields of I would say, probabilities, not possibilities.
Right.
Um, the collapse of the wave function, which basically means a particle is in all positions at once until a measurement is taken, and then the wave function collapses, and because of the measurement, we can define certain principles and characteristics of a particle.
Right. It chooses a set of characteristics because it's being measured in some
When
way.
you measure it, it suddenly becomes a particle you can see, you can detect.
Exactly. Right. Okay.
And entanglement is a state of correlation where a state of one influences another. And then in quantum mechanics,
Right.
that relates to photons or subatomic particles. So
Hmm.
if the two particles are entangled, if you change part of the state of one, it instantly influences the other one.
Right.
Okay.
And we were talking about that the electromagnetic fields are part of the quantum field, right? It's like it's
I
one
looked
aspect of the quantum field.
I looked that up, and what I got was that the electromagnetic field emerges from the quantum field.
Right. And so
It's a
that entanglement, I think we see in an exaggerated way in that particular field, or at least I do.
that's absolutely something to go research, because in in what we're going to talk about today, everything comes from the quantum field.
Right.
Okay, so now I was beginning to think I was losing my mind because quantum physicists believe that the quantum field emerges from the brain or the physical reality we're in. And it's very evident to me, and I believe anybody who's had an awakening experience, that awareness is the quantum field and everything is contained in that. It's not the other way around. Well,
Okay.
I was researching, okay, maybe somebody agrees with me, and it turns out my thoughts are pretty close to those of Federico Fagan. Fagan is a very famous physicist and has done extensive writing on this.
Hmm.
And he basically says the universe itself might be described as a single timeless wave function that is aware of itself. And so what I'm talking about today is based on the assumption that the quantum field is the universe and that everything is contained within that rather than quantum fields emerge from, or in other words, consciousness emerge from the rather the brain is inside of consciousness. It's
Brain is inside of consciousness.
right.
I think I'm gonna need to hear more before I can get
Well,
enough context to make sense of that.
okay, well, when we get a little further along, I think this will become apparent.
Okay.
In other words, the consciousness or awareness is the container of everything else. Everything is
Consciousness
contained
is
in
the
this,
container. Sure. Yeah, sure.
but physicists would say that consciousness is an expression of the physical world. It emerges from the brain and the rest of the physical world.
Okay.
It's a phenomenon tied, to that rather than the other way around.
Sure. Yeah,
I
I'm
know
just
it's,
trying to make sense of like how people can have out of body experiences and things like that. Like to me it says that you don't need the body for consciousness. It's just that you can have consciousness through a body.
I think anybody who has some kind of mystical experiences knows that intuitively, but if you're a brainiac and
You
you've
haven't
spent
had that.
your life in your head trying to figure it out with mathematics, that probably makes no sense.
For sure. Yeah, and I would have had a hard time understanding it before things just started happening to me. So,
Right,
no judgment.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay, so now let's look at the concept of entanglement. We talked about this before. Um, what if entanglement can be seen as a clock? And imagine, I'm going to use you and I as a metaphor for this. Imagine a
Okay.
completely timeless quantum state of the universe, a static
Mhm.
wave function with no evolution. In other words, there's no thing going on. There's nothing.
Mhm.
Now, suppose that this state is highly entangled, meaning its subsystems share strong quantum correlations. Now, I'm going to give an example of this in a minute.
Okay.
If you pick one subsystem as a reference, like a clock, you can describe how another subsystem state changes relative to that. Okay, so
Okay.
let's say that you and I are entangled. Now I'm sitting in my house and you're sitting in your house and you decide to go to the store. Okay, since we're entangled, I have a reference. My reference is me sitting in my house. But because you're entangled, as you get in your car and start driving to the store, I have an immediate understanding of your movement through time to go to the store.
Mhm.
And so, what if entanglement kind of creates a clock that allows us to understand one thing in relationship to another across time?
Mhm.
And
Right.
I'm going to get more specific here in a minute. So, the clock state, in other words, its potential or energy levels, becomes entangled with the system you're studying,
Right.
which would be you. I'm the clock state. You're the system I'm studying. And as I track changes in my clock, the system appears to evolve. Well, what's the evolution? The
Yeah.
evolution is
Like the
you move from
driving
your
or
house. Right,
yeah.
exactly. Right.
Yeah. You see what's
So,
happening with me a little more clearly because we're entangled. Is that what you're saying?
right.
Okay.
And there's a relationship. So I can correlate your movements relative to mine because, I am it's an entangled system. So now there's a relationship between the two.
Right.
Now I'm
Right.
using entanglement kind of as a metaphor here. I mean, who knows how this actually works?
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
So time, and I checked, there are some quantum physicists that believe this. Time emerging from entanglement suggests that what we perceive as the flow of events is a shadow cast by quantum correlations.
Okay, time emerging from entanglement suggests that what we perceive as the flow of events is a shadow cast by quantum correlations. Okay. I don't think I
So it,
totally get it yet.
so it appears that you're driving to the store,
Yeah.
but that's actually not what's happening. There is no flow of you going to the store, and it's really a quantum correlation, but it's not you driving to the store. You're not separate from me
Mm-hmm.
driving to the store.
Mm-hmm.
It's as if the universe is a vast static tapestry of entangled threads. I'm an entangled thread, you're an entangled thread,
Yeah.
and time is the pattern we weave by following one thread relative to another.
Right. Right.
Well, how do these threads emerge? They emerge through entanglement. And if you don't know what
Okay.
entanglement is, I would encourage you to look it up. So,
Yeah,
in, o-
quantum entanglement.
in other words, what I'm doing is I'm painting a picture that, from our point of view, we're living in this story where everything makes sense sequentially and it's all following this timeline. And but in reality, that's not exactly what's happening. But
Right.
it's what appears to be happening, but not exactly.
Mm-hmm. And that's because of our own brains adding to the story of the tapestry rather than helping us to see what's really just only there, right?
Well, we're not seeing the present moment. We're seeing time emerge from entanglement that gives it the appearance of a sequence.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So just like in the experiments, they reacted before they were shown the picture. Okay, those look like two separate things happening across time. And in this case, it appears to be happening in reverse, but that's not actually what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I know this is a little confusing, and trust me, I've spent several weeks trying to sort this out myself. So,
Yeah, it's okay. I feel like I'm more just like getting ready to get ready to understand it. Like that's
all
all.
right. So, in other words, a pie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Time is a
I'm
pie.
ex- I'm experiencing a pie,
Mm-hmm.
but what's happening is entanglement is cutting it into time pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a piece of pie at
Because
12
that's how we're
o'clock.
measuring. Okay. Mm-hmm.
We got a piece of the pie at 2 o'clock, but it's all a pie.
Mm-hmm.
It appears as separate pieces, but that's not actually true.
Right.
The emergence from the
Right.
entanglement of one piece to another appears that it's a sequence of pieces, but it's really
Mm-hmm.
all just a pie.
So it's like we're just seeing it as cut pieces.
But
The
that's
way
right.
it actually exists is that picture of the whole pie.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
So is this,
The
did I
pieces
dive
are a
off the,
hallucination.
exactly, that's a good way of putting it. Do we
Okay.
feel like I've
Okay.
I've taken a dive off the deep end here?
No, it's just a mind bending concept. So I'm trying to let you bend my mind a little bit.
It's well, I had this initial insight and I had to go back to it many times in order to remember what the insight was. That's how foreign it was to me.
Yeah.
So you remember the quantum garage.
Yep.
So here
Nothing's
we
in there
have
unless you can see it.
so here we are. The man is in the quantum garage
Hmm.
and the flashlight, the quantum garage, the darkness, everything in the darkness represents the possibilities that are in superposition.
Right.
And the flashlight represents his awareness.
Ability
So
to
when
measure
he,
somehow.
that's right. So it's in physics, it's a measurement being taken. So he shines he shines the flashlight and he sees the pie. But as we established in an earlier episode, his awareness of the pie is the pie that he's aware of. So if we
Mm-hmm.
go back to this, if he turns off the light, the pie is gone.
Right.
Or if he moves the light of his awareness to a different part of the quantum garage, another object emerges.
Yeah.
So the quantum garage is full of probabilities that there's a lawnmower, there's a bicycle, you know, there's a pie, there's a pair of
Right.
muddy boots,
An extra fridge.
and yeah,
Maybe a
right.
car.
But we don't know that. It's like Schrodinger's cat. We don't know that any of that exists until he shines the light on it.
Yeah.
So what this means is that my awareness of the pie or experience itself is the pie that I'm aware of. So awareness of an experience and the experience itself are so intimately linked that they form a kind of entanglement.
Yeah.
This entanglement in turn gives rise to the sensation of cause and effect unfolding over time.
Mm-hmm.
So my experience of you driving, my awareness of you driving to the store is you driving to the store that I'm aware of. If I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't aware of you driving to the store, I would never know that that's what you did.
Mm-hmm.
But my awareness of you creates a you that's driving to the store that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Just, just like in the
Okay.
quantum garage.
It like, yeah, it helps you read the situation, and it also is the situation in which you can read. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, no, this gets spookier and spookier.
Yeah, I feel
So,
like if we just keep saying it in different ways, that the concept will get more easily
right.
grabbed.
So this is a poetic
Yeah.
way to frame consciousness. I use
Mm-hmm.
consciousness and awareness synonymously as a participant in the emergence of time rather than just a passive observer.
Right. Right.
Okay. Now I know this is also counterintuitive. It's hard to wrap your mind around it because I have trouble with this.
Right. But you've seen a good reason to wrap your mind around it.
Well, where we're going with this is the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
See, all of this stuff is keeping us from the present moment.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. So our relationship with time is keeping us from the present moment, maybe?
Yeah, right.
So then if we have challenges with the present moment, we could challenge our relationship with time and our understanding of time itself, maybe.
So awareness, just like in quantum mechanics, collapses the waveform into a pie, and then entanglement slices it into time every 100 milliseconds. Okay, why is it every 100 milliseconds? Because as we've talked about in previous episodes, the brain refreshes about every 100 milliseconds. So we're not seeing a
Right.
continuous flow of events. The brain is chopping it up every 100
Right.
milliseconds and refreshes that. And so we're not seeing a single scene. We're seeing, millions of them chopped up. Now, I'm saying 100
Yeah.
milliseconds. I'm saying 100 milliseconds because research shows the brain refreshes our experience of reality every 100 milliseconds. Whether my assumption is true or not, I have no idea. but it makes sense to me that it's something like that.
Mm. Well, and like the brain refreshing makes sense for the slices itself. Like it's just what we can use to measure time is like our sense of it, our brain,
Right.
and that time's not changing. It's just our ability to measure it collapses and then re-engages over and
But
over and over and over. So it's
that's
like
my
our
theory.
brain really makes the slices.
Well, if you think about the way the brain works, you can trick the brain into recognizing patterns that aren't there. Why is that?
Totally.
Because the brain's job is to fill in the blanks so your experience of reality makes sense.
Right. Right. Which is why, like, people can get caught up in all kinds of crazy ideas or cults or things like that because the brain's just always trying to reconcile everything for you.
Well, if I see an object move from point A to point B, I'm seeing a slice here and a slice here, but the brain fills in the middle to give me a sense of continuous motion.
Yeah. Right.
All
Yeah.
right. So,
Okay.
no, now the question, here's the question. The question is, which one of these slices of the time pie is the present moment?
Is it arbitrary? It's
Well,
difficult to
maybe it's this,
say.
maybe the present moment is that slice, right?
It's as good as any.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So
Yeah.
you can see how ridiculous this is. You know, there's
Yeah.
there's no present moment in this pie that we've created called time.
Yeah.
So we can't go in and take a slice out of it and say, "Oh, this is the present moment."
Uh-huh.
Not possible.
Right.
So the present moment is an experience without a reference. So it's the entire
Mm.
pie. Just like
Okay.
consciousness is the entire pie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Awareness is the entire pie. It's
Mm-hmm.
timeless, it's immersive, it's boundless, it's integrated, it's oneness, it's flow.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now it's time if you if you like what we're doing here and you enjoy exploring this stuff, the mind and what goes on with reality, like and subscribe.
Mm-hmm.
And Christina's dog Sunny gets a treat.
Yeah. And she'll really appreciate that from you. So thank you on her behalf.
Also, we have an online community we'd like you to check out. There'll be a You can scan the QR code and you can ask us about the online community that we're recruiting founders and we got a bunch of them. We're going to talk about closing this out soon where the founders get a 50% discount. The online community is called Thought Masters,
Hmm.
and we invite you to check it out, get more
Hmm.
information about it.
Live a more conscious life.
Yeah, we do more than talk about quantum mechanics. Actually, this is kind of a rabbit hole we're going down with the channel right now.
This is new.
All right. So the question then becomes, using the metaphor of the pie, what if the present moment isn't a moment after all?
Right. Right. Like if it's our brain that's starting and stopping it, then it's just a perception.
So possibly the present moment is the wavefront collapse without time.
Hmm.
So in other words, in the present moment, there's no sense of time
Right.
without a reference to anything else. An experience without an anchor. And we'll find out in a second what the anchor is. Just
Okay.
awareness of experience. And that's my postulate. My theory is that's all that exists is the awareness of experience.
Hmm.
Or another way of saying this is consciousness having an experience.
Right. Which is why it's so important for us to not believe the story our default mode network makes for us, right?
You predicted where I'm going.
It
So what makes the presence timeless?
helps put that in perspective, though. Okay, so what makes presence timeless?
So the sense of
Hmm.
self that is having an experience external to itself defines time. And as you just said a minute ago, the sense of self that's doing this to us is the default mode network in the brain. It produces the
Hmm.
internal dialogue and a sense of self that goes with it.
Right, right.
My theory is this, strictly my theory. You remove self, you remove time, and you enter the present moment. And that is going to be the subject of our next video.
So removing the awareness of yourself,
That's
right?
right. You,
Okay.
um, maybe another way of saying that would be removing the awareness of you being a self.
Yeah, just being there and connecting with the moment rather
And you
than
and you do
being
this all
aware
day
you're an
long.
agent in the moment.
That's exactly right. We do this all day
Hmm.
long. So when we're focused and concentrating on something, the sense of self disappears.
Yeah,
And so does time.
right.
So you've been working on a project and you're so focused and involved, you have no sense of time.
Oh, totally.
That is the present moment.
I feel like that's where I exist naturally, but I have to like use a clock as a sort of trade language to get along in this world.
I understand. I understand. I
Yeah.
understand.
So it's like the presence is like when I'm happiest, I think, like the most thrilled because
Hmm.
I love being in the moment.
Absolutely. I think all that there is in the moment is the joy of being.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so going back to the research where this pre-reaction happens before the stimulus, without
Oh, like
a
the
self.
pictures that were in rapid succession, like that?
Yes, right.
Okay. Okay.
So they showed pictures in rapid succession, and they registered the person having an emotional reaction before the disturbing picture was shown.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
So without a reference to a self that's having an experience, there is no time, just the present, just entangled unity from awareness. The universe,
Okay.
so so there's nothing emerges. There's just this unity, awareness
Yeah.
being aware of itself. The universe is a single now, and every flicker of awareness bursts it anew. And I'm
Mm.
saying that happens every 100 milliseconds. That could be wrong. There's somebody I follow on the internet. His name is Cliff High. He says it happens 22 trillion times a second. Okay, that's fine, but the principle's the same.
Hmm.
This reality we're experiencing is resetting and rebuilding itself over and over and
Over
over,
and over and over.
based on quantum principles.
Yeah.
So awareness of experience are two notes in a single chord heard as one when the waveform collapses.
Yeah.
And this was the insight I had. The insight I had was that the reaction or the pre-reaction and the picture are two notes in a single chord. They're
Yeah.
inextricably locked together,
It's a nice way
heard
to put
as
that.
one when awareness or the measurement collapses the waveform.
Right. Mm.
So
Yeah.
Does this
Interesting.
make sense? So what I saw when I looked at this, and I was thinking, okay, how does quantum physics explain this pre-reaction? I suddenly realized there is no pre-reaction. It's all one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The reaction, the pre-reaction, and the picture, the scary picture, exist in the simultaneous moment of now because one predicts the other and the other confirms the prediction. Can't believe I just said that. Makes total sense.
Hmm. That's awesome.
So in other words,
Okay.
you right now, you are a creation of my awareness of you.
Sure.
And you confirm the fact that I'm aware of you. The two things are one. It's one process.
Right. Because I well, why? Why would you say?
Because awareness of experience is the experience you're aware of.
Okay.
My
I
awareness of
guess I'm having a
Christina,
hard time breaking this down for many little agents all working together, but I'll get
I
there.
understand, and I can't explain that either. I can't. All I know is from one point of view, one point of view is mine. My awareness of
Yeah.
you is the you that I'm aware of.
Right.
My awareness of the cup is the cup. So the entire world is made up of my awareness of it.
Right.
Just like the quantum garage, without awareness, it's just dark.
Right. Because your awareness is what is coming from you either being able to measure something or you wanting to measure something. Is
Well,
that fair?
in a quantum sense, in a quantum mechanics sense, my awareness is the measurement.
Right.
And so when I become aware of you, the waveform collapses into this person I know as Christina. And from your point of view, the same thing's happening with me.
Right.
So we're entangled in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Because we're
But
sharing that experience, or some things in common with that experience.
yeah, and I believe that the society, neighborhoods, personal relationships are a form of that entanglement.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's quantum entanglement. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I know, look, I'm sure there are two kind of people watching this, the kind of people that have a background in physics and think I'm crazy, and then the people who, you know, feel like the earth is under their feet and nothing can change that. And so I just hope you'll keep an open mind to these ideas.
Mm.
All right. So now here it gets even weirder. So the past and the future are psychological.
Mm-hmm.
The
Right.
stories
This I have
we
an
tell,
easier
huh?
time. Sorry.
Go ahead.
This I have an easier time with. That's all.
Okay. Okay. So the stories we tell ourselves about yesterday or tomorrow are mental constructs.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, the now moment is not a point in a timeline. It's the entirety of existence. The
Right.
brain,
Because that's all we ever have anything to do with is right now.
that's exactly right. And so the
Yeah.
brain simulates the past, but it is a present
Right.
experience, not a window into what was. So did I have breakfast yesterday? There's no possibility for me to prove that. But I'm having a present experience of remembering that I had breakfast yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't prove that actually happened.
Because you can't reverse time and be doing the exact thing that you were doing back then. Is that what you mean?
Well, the only no, the only thing I have as a reference point is my present experience. That's all there is.
So the only thing that you can prove is what's happening right now?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the only thing that's happening right now is my present experience. So my present experience of a past event is still happening now.
I don't know if this is going to help anything, but I'm trying to like keep following it along in this kind of abstract line of thinking. So, I don't know, is it fair to say the only thing you can prove is your consciousness?
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay.
And what is
Because if you can only
consciousness?
prove your awareness and your awareness is your consciousness.
So the only thing you can prove is that consciousness is having an experience. That's it. Awareness, we are, there's an awareness of an experience, and that's really all there is.
It's just like we're like all little measurement machines walking around.
So what I'm saying is awareness of experience is the sole arbiter of reality. So the reaction and the picture that we talked about in the research are not slices of the pie. There's a typo here. They fuse into the now through awareness and become entangled experience.
I need to know what an arbiter means. What
Somebody
is
who
an arbiter?
determines, somebody who determines, or a judge.
Okay, so awareness of the experience is the sole judge of reality.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
the reaction and the picture are not
right.
slices of a pie. They fuse into the now through awareness and become an entangled experience. All right.
Hold on, go back. I'm trying to put that together for a sec. The reaction and the picture are not slices of the pie. They fuse
And
into the now through
in other words,
awareness.
they're not two separate
So
events.
the reaction and the picture are part of time, and all three of them are entangled. Yes?
So so they're in well when we experience ourselves as a self, we slice it up into time pieces. But
Right.
the in reality, the reaction and the picture are not slices of a pie or time slices. They're not in a sequence. The
Hmm.
sequence only emerges because we think we're a self having an experience.
Okay.
The time emerges from the quantum field to try to make sense of this sequence, but actually the two things are fused into the present moment through awareness and become an entangled experience.
Okay.
So, so this all
I
happens
think I'm beginning
outside
to
of
work that
time.
out. Yeah.
All right, so now this even gets even spookier. Reality as an appearance. So the external world doesn't exist out there with its own timeline and substance. It's an experience that only arises when observed.
Hmm.
This aligns with certain quantum theories and the teachings of the awakened masters like Advaita Vedanta, Buddhism, Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta Maharaj,
Hmm.
and there are many, many
Say
others.
that. Say that 5 times fast. But that's
Nisargadatta,
pretty.
he's an interesting guy. He was a cigarette salesman in Bombay who became enlightened, and people from all over the world came to meet in his attic and listen to him talk.
Huh. I feel like I remember hearing about him before.
I think I had a copy of his book called I Am That on one of our,
Okay. And maybe you went into that a little bit.
I think I told his story, yeah.
He wasn't I don't know where Bombay is, but that wasn't close to the Silk
India.
Roads, right?
I don't
Like
know.
did he sell cigarettes on the Silk Roads and that's how he met people?
No, actually he was like a wholesaler or like a dealer. I
Okay.
believe he sold
They'd go to the
cigarettes
shops and
exactly. But when he was a
merchants.
when he was about 40, he decided he needed to be enlightened. So he went and found a guru, and he did what the guru said, and he became enlightened.
Mm-hmm.
And people from all over the world came to hear him teach.
Mm.
And strangely enough, he died of lung cancer from smoking.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of ironic.
Hmm.
All right.
Well,
Consciousness is self-aware. And this
right.
is what
I
and
think,
this is what
therefore I am. Mm-hmm.
this is what Federico Fagan says, what he concludes. So awareness um, of its own probabilities, it's basically consciousness is aware of its own probabilities manifesting as a specific experience in the present. So right now, consciousness is
Yeah.
manifesting itself as me talking to you, doing this program on the computer. This is a manifestation of consciousness
Right.
as a specific experience in the present moment.
Hmm. Right.
Okay, now here's the setup to our third in this series, free will and creation. So, in essence, the wave function doesn't collapse because of a measurement. Consciousness, aware of itself, chooses to experience itself as a definite state called you in the world.
Mm. So each moment my body's choosing to exist as a definite state.
Well, consciousness is choosing to express itself as your body having an experience.
Consciousness is my awareness expressing itself through my body. Is that what you said?
It's expressing yourself as a human body having an
As a human
experience.
body. Okay.
But none of it's actually real.
It's
All
all just an
it's just
interpretation.
it arises in consciousness as an appearance of something happening because consciousness wants to experience itself in that way.
Yeah. Maybe simulating itself in that way.
Um, yeah, it wants to know itself,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's using free will in the process of creating that knowing. And part of that free will is Christina. Part of
Yeah.
it's Mark.
Okay.
Okay.
Whole cosmic web.
I hope this didn't sound too disconnected. I hope it had some coherence to it today.
I think it's more that I'm trying to understand it on the next deep level, and that it just takes a little bit of time for these new concepts to even start to be understood by me.
Well, think about your experience when somebody came along and said you're not your thoughts.
Yeah, it took me a minute.
Yeah, it's like what?
Hmm.
So yeah, all of these, we live in a certain frame of reference, and all these ideas are outside of this frame of reference. And it takes a while to get used to even having the conversation in this way.
Yeah, for sure. And I've been lucky because more and more people that I've been running into have been able to engage with this type of conversation with me, and that's been so wonderful. But
Good.
yeah, it just takes me some time. These are big new thoughts for me.
Like I told you before we started recording, this took me 3 weeks to put this in any kind of a coherent fashion where I could really communicate it logically.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like I do see a thread kind of running through all of it. So it's like, okay, I can tell on some in some way that there is a logical progression here for understanding, but I just haven't filled in all the blanks yet. So it's it'll take time.
So, so um, Episode number 3 will be about how consciousness expresses free will and creates reality. And this will give
Mm,
us, will take us into this whole idea of manifesting that's so popular.
right.
And I'll
Interesting. Okay.
see, I'll show you a different way of looking at this,
Interesting.
and how to get into the flow. We'll talk about that next episode, how to get into the flow. And then we're going to use the
Interesting.
flow to try to create a reality that's better than the one we have.
Oh, I okay. Well, maybe I'll have some personal sharing stories to share too, because I feel like experientially, I'm maybe getting exposed to different things within this. So,
Great. Good. Look forward to hearing that.
yeah, cool.
If
Well, thanks
anybody's
for
interested, I
this.
have, this is not coming up. I've written 3 books. Um, you're more than welcome to check those out. And please contact us using the QR code or the email address below. We'll be happy to continue the conversation. And do consider joining us in our online community, Thought Masters. We're going to have a lot of fun with that.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, thank you, Mark, and thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you, Christina. We'll see you next time.
All right, bye.
Bye bye.